Let's face it, starting a new church can be an uphill battle with countless challenges and seemingly endless to-do lists. Well, I want you to know if you're feeling stuck in your church plant right now, you are not alone. In fact, I've been there. And as a church planter who's been on both sides, in this video, I want to unpack what works for church plants, what never works for church plants, and what every church planter needs to know in order to grow their church. Let's do this. Well, hey guys, I'm Thomas Costello, and thanks for being here. If you're watching this video, you are probably a pastor, a church planter, or someone who's considering planting a church, and I want to start out just by encouraging you. You're doing a great thing. In fact, it's something that I've done as well. I planted a church back in 2007, and to be really frank with you, that first church that I planted did not go very well. I made a lot of mistakes and learned from them. And then in 2013, I actually started, or I should say restarted a church. And I learned from a lot of those earlier mistakes, and we had a much better run of it that second time around. And in this video, what I'm hoping to do is unpack some of those things that I've learned and what we have seen here at REACHRIGHT that is helping church planters grow their church. So stick around, we're gonna dig in. But before we do, let me start off with a little bit about why it's important to market a new church. In almost every case, when you see a growing church, there is a very deliberate strategy that got them to that place. And so I want to talk about several of those steps to that strategy. And the first part is before you do anything related to marketing, you need to do step one, and that is define your church's identity. Now, I know this has been said many times before and in many different ways, and defining our identity, it feels like for churches, a lot of us, we naturally should have a very similar identity. After all, we're all here to reach people with the gospel of Jesus, right? But in reality, God has given you a very unique assignment. Chances are you're planting in a place where another church already exists, and while you have the same overall mission of reaching people with the gospel, He's given you a very unique assignment and a very unique group of people that you're supposed to be reaching. So a few things to be thinking about. You need to make sure you have a clear mission and vision. What is it your church is called to do that nobody else in the world is called to do? Figuring that out is really important. And then after you have that, it's important to really think through who you're specifically trying to reach. I know this rubs a lot of church planters the wrong way because when we think about it, we probably want to reach just about everybody. When we read the Gospels, we don't see Jesus excluding or picking certain people to reach. But in reality, if you're trying to reach everybody, you'll do a good job of reaching nobody. It's important that churches really figure out who their target audience is. And maybe that is just people in a certain radius of where your church will be, but in some cases you need to go a little bit deeper. Are you trying to reach young families or high school age kids or senior citizens? Are there different groups of people that you feel like you're best able to reach? Talk about that and come up with who your church's avatar is. One of the first pastors to do this was Pastor Rick Warren at Saddleback Church, and they created an avatar named Saddleback Sam. And while Saddleback was open to anybody from Orange County or anywhere in the world coming to their church, they knew that they wanted to tailor all of their marketing and all of their experiences to someone that matched the profile of Saddleback Sam, who was a family man and had a busy life and was just trying to make it there in Orange County. Once they defined this, it really helped them hone all of their messaging going forward, which is important for every church plant to do. After you've identified your target, you need to create a value proposition. And this is one place that I see a lot of churches get stuck on. We kind of come up with these quotes that are very inward focused, but what a value proposition is answering the question of what is important to that target audience of ours. And maybe think of it this way. How can you come up with a statement to answer what's important to your avatar, to that person that you're trying to reach? So the thing about a value proposition is it needs to be focused not so much on you and who you are, but what other people, what your audience is trying to accomplish in their lives. Spend some time thinking about this because you're going to use that value proposition in everything you do to market your church. After you have your church's identity figured out and spend some time on that, the next step is to turn this into visual form. So you need to create a visual identity for your church. And in that, I'm talking about logo and branding specifically. I recommend that most churches actually take some time and maybe even invest some money in this area, because your logo and your branding, ideally it's going to be something that you have for the next 15 years as a church. If you really get your logo and your branding right, it's not something that you want to be changing every year. So invest in this area. Take some time to come up with a logo that really reflects your mission, your values, and what that real value proposition is for your church. As you're doing that, you want to spend some time getting all your colors and fonts and getting all those things systematized so that anything you produce going forward will have a consistent feel that you can replicate over and over again. This will make every step of all of your marketing in the future much, much easier to get these things dialed in. It's best to have some kind of a branding guidelines document that talks about the colors that we use, the way we use our logo, the fonts that we use, and all of these kinds of decisions, so it doesn't leave anything up to the imagination to anybody that's trying to promote your church there. So get these things dialed in, and then the next step is to start building your online presence. And there's two ways I want to focus on that. The first one is focusing on your church website. Your church website is going to be the center of everything that your church does there. And so it's really important that you get that dialed in right. So what do you put on the website? Well, it's going to be a lot of those vision and identity type statements. You want a lot of that, but you don't just want statements about here's what we believe, here's what we're going to do, here's who our target audience is. You actually want photography and video and imagery that captures the mood and sentiment and the statements. You want to really flesh that out with visuals. You've heard it said before that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I'd say a video is worth 1,000 pictures, and it is such a powerful tool to tell the story of your church. So when you're looking for photography and video, here's one thing that we say is we encourage churches to get people caught in the act doing the values of your church. If you catch people with candid shots actually living out the values, people will actually find this and they'll find it contagious. They'll be able to capture what the church is about. Here's what we found is that people will almost never read your mission, vision, and value statements, but they will always look at video and photography that tells the story of what your vision, mission, and value statements say. So get that part right and really nail your website. As you're doing it, you want to make sure that you're focused on one specific thing, and that's local SEO. This will be one of the main drivers of traffic to your church as you go into launch phase. People are looking online for things like churches near me or youth ministry in Englewood. They're typing in these kinds of searches, and when they do, you want to be the one that shows up. So the way that you do that is you start using those kinds of terms like your local city, and you talk about your youth ministry, and you produce content on the website that is optimized for local SEO. We have a lot of different videos about that. I'll put that up here in the notes. You can take a look at some of those videos on how to specifically dial in your local SEO efforts. But for now, just be keeping those kinds of things in mind. One other thing you can do to really focus on local SEO, and this is really simple, is making sure you get your contact information into your site. You want every single page of your website to have a footer that has the name of your church, your address, and your phone number. Now, if you're a church plant that's just starting out and maybe you don't have an address just yet, well, that's okay. You can put your mailing address on there, and at a minimum, it'll start to give Google an idea of what city and location your church is going to be in, and that will start to help with your local SEO rank. The other side is getting all of your social platforms dialed in, and this is one of the great equalizers for church plants, is that if you are good at social media, you can have a presence and a reach that's just as large as any other church. It really is an amazing time to plant a church. Now, one of the mistakes that I see so many church planters making is trying to be on every platform all the time on social media. And the truth is, for a small church that's just getting started, it's hard to produce great content on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Snapchat, on all of these different platforms at the same time. In fact, what tends to happen is that we try to make content for all these platforms, and none of it is really very good, so that leaves us with a mediocre presence on lots of sites. As a general rule, you want to focus on a couple of sites and do it very well. And one of the best opportunities right now for that is with short form video. We also have a lot of content on that, and I'll link to that up here. But what I'm talking about with short form video is sites like TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. This has become the main way that churches are seeing success on social media. This short form vertical video, it's consumed all other forms of social media. It used to be that you could just put up a scripture graphic or highlights of your events and you would get a lot of traction. But nowadays, you need to have video content that is actually engaging people. And when you do, you can really build a following if you get this area right there. So start to set up those accounts. If I was just starting a church right now, I would probably make YouTube my primary choice because you'll wind up using that for sermons and full-length videos as well. But as you're making YouTube shorts, the truth is you can also use that exact same content and put it onto TikTok and Instagram. So if I was choosing a few platforms, I would choose all three: TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts, and start to really hone your short form video and build some traction that way to build an audience. In almost every case now, it's not worth it to consider doing television commercials or direct mailers or newspaper advertising or yellow book advertising. All of those methods are a little bit out of date, but there are still some traditional methods that are working. The first one I would say is swag. Getting some swag printed for your church is a great investment. So by that, I'm talking about things like t-shirts and coffee mugs and pens, and all of these things will have your branding, the thing that we talked about earlier in this video. You'll have that ready to go and getting your colors, your fonts, and your logo right on there, along with that unique value proposition we decided on, that statement that really resonates with the people in your community there. You'll want to start doing these and passing them out to anybody that shows any kind of interest in your church, or certainly all of your core team members. You want to make sure that they are swagged out and have lots of stuff, because it's such a good conversation starter. When someone sees someone wearing a t-shirt or drinking from a mug at a coffee shop that has a logo they've never seen before, it's a great way to kind of kick off some conversations and talk about what God's doing in the community and what your church is all about. But beyond that, some of the things that we see church plants having success with when it comes to traditional marketing is networking and then using some local media. And by local media, I don't mean paying again for newspaper advertisements, but if you start networking and having relationships and talking to people that are in the know or leaders within your community, these kinds of opportunities will start to spring up where you can be the pastor that comments on a local issue that's happening in your area, or your networking leads you to build relationships with other churches or nonprofit organizations in your community. These kinds of advertising techniques are tried and true, and they are still working today. As you do some of that networking in your traditional marketing methods, you can take a step to the next idea, which is fostering community outreach. And this is something that is so key for every church plant, is you need to get your name out there with big community type events. So we see church plants having a lot of success hosting events, especially when they tie them to some kind of a need or some kind of a season that happens in their community. So seasons could be things like Easter or Halloween or Christmas time, really doing something that goes along with those days that's out there and in the community. I'm talking about things like trunk or treats or egg hunts or vacation Bible schools. You don't have to have a church building to pull off these kinds of things. In fact, I think people are a lot more likely to attend an Easter egg hunt or a Halloween party that happens in a community center or at a park than they are at a church setting. And that's a great way for you to start to build some relationship. But you can also look at some of those more need-based community outreaches. And a great way to do this is by partnering with local organizations that already have a footprint in the community there. Let's face it, as a new church, it's hard for you to have any kind of a lasting impact with only a handful of people and limited resources. And your best bet is to partner with some organizations that are already doing a great job meeting those needs. So if you have local soup kitchens or homeless ministries or pregnancy counseling centers or these kinds of places, they're a great way to encourage you and members of your church to get involved, make connections, and kind of build some momentum toward what God is doing there in your community. As you're doing that, that brings up the next idea, which is encouraging word of mouth. And really, this is probably the key for every church plant because it doesn't cost you anything, and that really is important. So a few ideas that I have to help encourage word of mouth advertising for your church. Number one is incentivize people. Now, that doesn't mean giving them cash if they bring their friends. That's not what we're talking about, but sometimes the incentive is just recognition. I know at one church we worked with, whenever someone brought a friend, someone would sneak them a little pack of life lifesavers to say thank you. And it was kind of a fun play to say that you're a lifesaver for bringing someone to church and introducing them to Jesus, but it was a fun way to recognize that inviting your friends is really important. Also, make it a habit all the time to share testimonies. Your social media channels are a great place to do that. It's actually a great content idea for your TikTok and YouTube short videos to do some short 50-second testimony videos of people talking about the impact that God has had on their lives as a result of what he's been doing within your church there. And finally, in that word of mouth category, you need to be training your people, your core team, to be ambassadors for your church, reminding them that everywhere they go, not just when they're actively trying to invite someone to church, but in everything that they do, they are a representative and an ambassador of Jesus and of your church specifically and what God's doing there. So empower them and train them on how to have those kinds of conversations and some of the things that a brand ambassador should do. Reminding people of this, it'll go a long way. The final and really one of the more important steps is to actually track and measure your results. This is something that I find churches usually aren't really great at because our results are so often anecdotal. They're based on stories of this person had this kind of an encounter, and it's hard to measure and analyze and do something with stories about what God is doing there. But you actually have to find a few things that you can measure. Here's a few things that we recommend. The first step is to make sure that you set really clear goals. And I know this can be kind of hard because you're totally relying on the Holy Spirit to build and grow your church. After all, Jesus himself says, I will build my church. But it's important that you actually set some numerical goals of what you want to see happening. How many followers do you want to have on your social accounts? How many likes and subscribes do you want to have on YouTube? How many people do you want to have at your initial meetings and your kickoffs and at your launch Sunday? Start to set some of those numerical goals so you can measure your progress and really see how you're doing. I'd encourage you to be modest with that. Don't come out and say we're going to have 1,000 people on our first Sunday. Have some realistic and attainable goals, and you can always pivot them up if you're hitting them and they feel too easy to you. One of the most important things you can do on the website is to set up Google Analytics. This is a measurement tool that helps you see all of the things that people are doing on your site. Now, an effective site is going to have lots of visits and they're going to spend a lot of time on the website, but the most important thing you want to measure is something called conversions. And by that, I don't mean like people giving their life to Christ on the website. Well, that would be really great. A conversion in a website context means someone who accomplishes the goal that you set out for that person. So for you, it might be something like they signed up for more information or they signed up to come to one of our pre-launch meetings. If someone signs up, that would be a conversion, and that's something for you to celebrate. And you can start to measure when we get 1,000 visitors, we tend to see 3 conversions. So if I can up the number of visitors we see on the site, we in turn most likely will see an increase in the number of conversions that we see on the site. Start to measure these kinds of things and build a habit of that, and it'll really reap results. Once you have some of these baselines figured out, then you can start to tweak some of your different marketing strategies. You can turn up what's working on Facebook and maybe turn down your efforts on TikTok. You'll be able to make informed decisions because you have the data to back it up. Start measuring things early and you won't regret it. These strategies are some of the things that we see the fastest growing church plants using to actually reach more people in their community. But we want to know, what is your church or church plant doing to reach more people? Let us know down in the comments below, and we'll catch you next time.